Namaste. Welcome to Satsang. First, I'd like to start by apologising for the late start. Technical issues this evening, but hopefully we're good to go now. So, okay. I'd just like to start by a few announcements before we get going, before we dive into the subject of tonight's Satsang. A couple of quick announcements. If you were booked to go to retreat with us next weekend on the 27th, could you please check your emails as soon as possible? There's something we need you to respond to there. And for the foreseeable future, with the situation as it is at the moment, we are going to be holding Satsang online only for the time being, as you may have been aware. And this is a beautiful opportunity for people who are used to being here in the room to begin to transcend some limiting beliefs that it's different when you're online, or it's not as good. Myself, my own journey, I only got to sit with a teacher twice. And so I was forced really to transcend these beliefs that I needed to be there in person. And this is a really good opportunity. Anything that seems to be a difficulty, you can turn into an opportunity to use for our spiritual growth. If there is any idea at all within your being that something can limit you or block you from realizing what you are, such as some circumstance like this arising, then we're really going to be able to use these kind of opportunities to go deeper inside our own consciousness. So for the time being, Satsang will be online only. I have some questions here emailed, which I will take first. If you do have a question that you want to make sure gets addressed as soon as possible, you can email to evolutionofspirit@gmail.com or check out the website helenhamilton.org for more details there. And just another quick update, the Dissolving Ego course will run next month. Again, it will be online attendance only with the current situation. And it won't run again then until September. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know as soon as you can. The course is jam-packed for full weeks of all the information distilled down that I wish I'd known when I was waking up. So just seeing the comments there, sorry for the late start, but technical problems, but we're sorted now. So the Dissolving Ego course, if you want to do it, is going to give you these 4 weekly lessons with me. It's going to give you some homework every week to make sure that you're assimilating what you're learning and starting to live as that. Also, you'll get email contact with me one-to-one throughout the course, so you can ask any particular questions that you've got. Also, if you're on Facebook, there is a private Facebook group for course students as well. So give us a shout, contact us if you want to start the course. Again, it won't run after this in April till September. Okay. So tonight I wanted to tackle a subject that was difficult for me as well, and it's come up several times this week and today again with different people. And it's really that stage where we feel that we have a sound grasp of what we are intellectually. So we've read about the truth, we've perhaps followed several different pathways, teachers, we have a good working knowledge up here, but it's not as yet a lived truth. It's not as yet profoundly changed our life. And the other side of that is that we may still be in a seeking mode. We may still be coming from a place of trying to get somewhere. So I wanted to tackle that tonight because it's a question I get very often. How do I live as this truth? How do I move from here to here? How do I begin to turn what I've learned, instead of knowing about it, and become a living example of it? And there are a lot of myths in this area that we follow. There are a lot of beliefs about this process, that it's difficult and it's complicated. So where we start tonight, hopefully we can dispel those myths, and hopefully you can come to see that it's a really very simple thing. Like anything in awakening, it's simplicity in itself. So if you're anything like I was, or at some point, I have all these books on my bookshelf. I'd followed all these different pathways, researched everything I could find completely. I had a head full of knowledge about the truth. And I wasn't it wasn't making any difference in my life. It wasn't bringing me more peace. It wasn't bringing me more joy. I certainly wasn't feeling love. It was mostly negative emotions. The first thing to realize is the sense of I that wants to make this a lived experience. The one that says, how do I actually do this, is not the real self. So the one that's asking, how do I make this a lived experience? How do I bring this into my life? Can never actually complete that journey. If there is a shortcut in this journey, it's to realize that as quickly as you can. Why? Because that is coming from our ego. It's coming from a thought entity, a thought construct. And instead of actually achieving this journey from head to heart, instead of moving from here to here, you can simply come to realize, you can hear, not necessarily meaning the heart in the body, it's the heart of our being, the silence, the depth of peace and silence that we are. So instead of trying to make a journey, we can come to see that which hears that desire, the one that has the desire, how do I live this peace? How do I assimilate this and become the true self as a lived experience, is watched, is heard from the great silence of your being. Every time that you have a thought, every time that you have a desire arise inside you, it is seen by the awareness that you are. Every single time. And it doesn't matter whether what arises, I want a cup of tea or I want to realize the self. If you can see that this I that's speaking this way is still wanting change, it's still wanting to become something, it's still wanting actually to be other than where it is. Why is that important to know? Because if we identify that sense of I, if we think it's our desire, I need to embody this, I need to make this a lived experience, then we're going to be starting off on the assumption that we are not that already. That I'm not already living as this peace, living as this self. And even if we're feeling a great deal of disturbance in our life, if we set out to try and find peace, then we're coming from a vibration of it's not already here. I don't actually have that peace that everyone describes as the awakened state. How do I find it? The only way to shortcut that journey then is to consciously come to recognize that the real self doesn't have that kind of desire. It's not making a journey from here to here. It's already only here and watching these thoughts arise. This may seem like a really simple thing I'm saying, but if you really grasp that This urge to deepen as the self, this urge to become more established as what you really are, this sense that I need to embody this more, this idea that I'm not quite where I've seen the sages to be. You know, I'm not quite feeling the peace that I want. All of this is the voice of our mind or our ego. And to try to fulfill this desire is just going to lead to more suffering. If instead you can shift your attention to what is listening to this desire, what is watching, then you're going to recognize that place that doesn't need anything at all. The awareness itself, the silence of your being, whatever you want to call it, it's not trying to embody this peace. It's not trying to get anywhere. So how do you move from reading about it in the book to being this living example of peace, or from listening to this to living as this? It's really to come to recognize that every single thing that arises in your mind, every desire, is happening to this sense of I that is coming and going. It's not permanent, this I. This desire to make this journey from head to heart, the one that wants it, it's not a permanent and stable thing. It's gone when the waking state is gone at night time. It's gone when the consciousness is left, such as a time if you have an anesthetic, or even when you're in a deep meditation, that desire is gone. There must be something more fundamental underneath this desire to live as this. Why is this important? Because we all get stuck in this belief that I haven't seen it fully. I'm not feeling that peace yet. I hear it again and again. So I must be missing something. I must not be there yet. If you can recognize that that voice is wanting change, that voice is wanting to become or to get somewhere, and that isn't true for the real self, it isn't even trying to deepen as itself. And instead of indulging this desire, trying to get somewhere, and even if our ego at this point, it's not trying to get out there somewhere, it's definitely trying to get in here more, or it's trying to get deeper into that self. Is that possible if it is what you already are? Is it possible to establish yourself as that truth any more than you already are? Our mind will say, of course it is, because I'm not feeling peace right now. But could it be that very desire that you're entertaining that's causing the disturbance? Could it be the idea that there's somewhere to go deeper or further or higher that's actually causing the sense of unrest inside you? Could it be that that is what is creating the sense of not being there yet? So instead of indulging this desire to go further, if you can bring yourself to a constant recognition of what's already here, what's complete. Now, there is something watching every thought that you've always called I, that you've always called me, that is already home. It's not traveling anywhere. It's not becoming anything. And again, referencing that before you set off on a journey. Is my real self trying to deepen, or trying to stabilize, or trying to understand more, or trying to even get rid of my ego? Is it trying to do any of that? And again, the answer will be no. It's not going anywhere at all. It doesn't even see the journey from the head to the heart. It sees the thoughts inside our head happening inside the heart of our being. The desire and the one that wants it to deepen is happening inside the great space of your being. So it's a simple decision to make a stand as that which really is already and unable to move from this absolute standpoint. The awareness which watches this desire to deepen as the awareness is not involved in that, it's already removed from that. How to establish yourself as that is simply to constantly choose it. If we say, I want to be living as this real self, and then the very next moment we're agreeing that we need or we want something, then we have gone back with our mind. We've gone back with our old sense of self, some loyalty towards that. Right now, if you clear yourself of all concepts, just forget everything you know in this moment. Empty yourself out. Don't hold on to any particular thought or desire in this time we have now. Just set down any knowledge and put it aside. Even if your mind is talking, you can still do this. Just don't hold on to anything that it says. Just be that space in which those thoughts are appearing. And you'll see immediately there isn't anywhere for you to go to. There isn't anything you need to develop about yourself. You're not a work in progress. You are absolutely that already. In the great space of your being, this vastness, does it really need to get deeper? Does it really need to become more firmly established? Does it need to dissolve the ego? Does it need to transcend the mind? Is it really trying to get anywhere at all? If you just rest as what is real inside you, there's just a setting aside of these desires, even these most spiritual desires of all, which seem to make sense for us to hold on to. But I've seen that which is true inside myself. And now I want to see it all the time. I want to be it all the time. How do I do that? Even this thought can just be allowed to float through awareness. Even this thought can just be allowed to travel and to go. Does that vast expanse of your being have any desire at all, any need to change? Is it a work in progress? So every time that we experience what we actually are, we'll see that this desire only seems to arise to go further, to go deeper. When we go with our mind, to our mind, there's always going to be somewhere else to reach. There's always going to be something else we need to do before we feel constant and unending peace. Could it simply be that not to combine yourself with any thought or desire at all is enough? Could it be that what you are already is peace, and any idea at all that we hold on to is going to disturb that peace? So just recognizing what you are, that you're not a thing, that you are more like the intangible space in the room, and that any amount of objects or thoughts can pass through you and desires, and you don't need to grasp or combine yourself with them. In that moment, you'll recognize this is the heart of your being, and you are there already, and you are that already. There's nothing else for you to do. Mind has a subtle suggestions at this point, that it'd be great if you could feel this all the time. It'd be great if this didn't go away when you finish satsang. It'd be great if mind didn't get in the way, it will say. Just don't entertain those. We're not pushing them away, but just refusing to agree that you need to stabilize, even that there's anywhere else for you to go. Are you willing to live as that place that is already arrived because it never left? Are you willing to allow these thoughts to come and go, clearly discerning they're nothing to do with me? Allowing yourself to rest in the great expanse of your being as that great expanse. You'll see the I thought float through your awareness in that space. Recognizing that there is nowhere else to travel here, that what you are is already and established and already unable to change. Anything that wants to move from head to heart is traveling, is journeying, is looking for a destination still. And if you've had enough of traveling, then you come to rest here. This is the place where nothing can disturb you at all. Even if mind is talking, it's talking inside you. Even if emotions are arising, they're arising inside you. If you don't allow any experience that you have to dictate what you're going to think about yourself, if you're not going to allow any experience you have to dictate what you're going to feel is true, then you'll always be at peace. Even if some negative emotion arises, if you don't allow that to confirm that you're not there yet, then it will just arise inside you and dissipate. It's a decision to live from the heart already, not a journey to get there. Or you could say head to heart happens now, in this moment. There's a choice where you're going to live your life from. And whatever experience you have out there, and whatever feeling or thoughts arise in here, sensations, if you don't allow any of those to dictate who you feel yourself to be and to dictate your progress or your worth, then there will be peace constantly. So resting in this space, as this space of awareness, mind can say, this is going to leave soon. You won't be able to keep this experience, it will say. You just allow that voice to arise, and you don't have to agree with it. If you allow that voice to just talk inside you and not to you. Because anything you pick up from the mind, you are going to experience. If you allow the mind to suggest and you begin to agree that you're going to lose this at some point, then you will lose it. If instead you say you didn't get anything, do anything to get this, it's just here. It is the space of consciousness in which your mind and body are appearing. It is that which hears the thought when mind talks. You've always just called it you. But recognizing it clearly, it's not on a journey at all. It's not on a becoming. It's not a work in progress, unlike our mind. So moving from head to heart doesn't take a long time. It takes a decision, however long it takes to make that decision to live as that which is not traveling. It doesn't want or need anything. And that is all that the sages have done. And the great enlightened beings of the past is to choose this. To choose this over the thoughts. To choose this over the experiences. To no longer allow any good or bad experiences to sway them from their own recognition of themselves. And that can happen now. And it can continue for the rest of your life, just a simple and consistent choosing of that which isn't going anywhere. A simple refusing to agree that no matter what happens out there in here, that anything has changed for me, that I need to do more work. What is it like to pitch your tent here as this which cannot be disturbed, this in which all disturbance is just happening? Is it affected by anything at all? Okay. So I have some questions that we emailed in here. I've got quite a few, so we'll see how much time we have to get through. And just for the time that we're having Satsang online only, if you do have a really burning question, if you want to type a concise question into the live chat, I'll do my best to answer. Might not get through so many of them because there's quite a few here. If you want to make sure your question is answered as soon as possible, it's best to email it to me at evolutionistspirit@gmail.com. So first question says, "Hi Helen, I am writing from India. I recently came across your teachings and satsang and felt right at home. Thank you for being the beautiful light in this world. My question: I've been off work lately as I needed time to disengage from the outside world so that I can be the self without my mind finding reason to keep me occupied mentally with worldly thoughts. However, I need to get back to work sooner or later, and I don't have the drive to learn anything new at the same time, as I feel it will be waste, since it will pull me in a direction of success and money, etc. I do have a career path in mind that would require me to learn and engage in the world. My challenge is, I don't know if I should commit to that path or just do nothing and accept whatever shows up. The uncertainty of what will happen when the money runs out makes me anxious occasionally. How can I deal with these feelings? Thanks." So need to get back to work sooner or later, and I don't have the drive to learn anything new at the same time. I think we can all identify with that after we've recognized to some degree what we are. There can be this period that happens, I've seen in many people's life, happened in my own life. There's somehow everything out there calmed down a little bit, and I was given this kind of time to really sit with what I'd seen and to come to deep seeing again and again and again of what I actually am. But now I need to get back to work sooner or later, and I don't have the drive to learn anything new at the same time, as I feel it will be a waste, since it will pull me in the direction of success and money. I do have a career path in mind that will require me to learn and engage in the world. My challenge is I don't know if I should commit to that path or just do nothing and accept whatever shows up. The uncertainty of what will happen when the money runs out makes me anxious occasionally. How can I deal with these feelings? But I want to say as well that what happens when we find that we're being pulled back to move back into our normal life, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Most of us look at this as it's going to detract from my ability to focus on the self and be the self. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen. You'll probably find is that now you're feeling that you have to move back into the world. That is because you're ready to test your seeing. It's because you're ready to test your conviction and to be able to test it from a place of passing that test. All of us have an idea inside ourselves that we can't be busy in the world and live as a self as well. It was certainly there inside me. So I would suggest looking at this as an opportunity to prove to yourself just how deep your seeing has actually gone already. And even if you do feel that you have to engage your mind, you have to take a certain amount of focus off your spiritual search. You can never forget what you've seen. And you'll come to recognize that even when your mind and body are busy, perhaps learning new things, engaging in in the work, learning, and whatever that new job entails, that you will be watching that happen from the stability of the awareness as the awareness. If instead of saying this is a negative thing, you can say, how is this going to be a positive? How is this going to work for my awakening? Then you'll recognize that there is this opportunity to live, to deepen your authenticity here, to just be able to see that whatever your mind and body are doing, you're always established as that seeing. And throughout the day, if your attention goes towards your knowledge that you're learning or the work that you're doing, you're still seeing that, and that you're still undisturbed by that. And it's a perfect way to finally transcend the belief that you're doing anything at all. When we're pushed to engage in the world again, usually that's the only way we're going to transcend that belief. I found after this quiet period happened for me that there was this having to get to re-engage again, as this questioner is saying. And it really pushed me through this idea that I was doing anything at all. And to live from that as that, while your body is, busily engaged in providing an income, then you really recognize that you're not doing anything at all, that you are watching all of it, that you're unchanged, more importantly, even when your body is busy. So it's an opportunity, it's a moment for you to reassess and to test these beliefs, to challenge these beliefs. There is nothing at all that can get in the way of your awakening, nothing. There isn't anything at all that can stop it from deepening either, all by itself. And this having to go back to work is just that happening right now. I would suggest as well challenging these feelings that that this money can run out. You know, it was a big thing for me. The uncertainty of what will happen, you say, when the money runs out makes me anxious occasionally. So to recognize what you really are and to live as that means to challenge these thoughts. Can you, as the infinite being, run out of anything? Is there anything other than you to get, especially and including money? Your financial situation will be a reflection of your level of consciousness, not the work that you're doing. And so do you recognize that you can no longer lack anything because there's nothing separate to you? And you move beyond ideas of earning money or receiving money or giving money. That money is just another way that you can show up as the self. Then you'll begin to really allow money to come in no matter what is happening. Very good question. Should I commit to that path or just do nothing and accept whatever shows up? Well, you're not doing anything anyway. Your body and mind will spontaneously move out into the world when it's time to. You'll see that happen. So you could facilitate that with a question. How does the self want to move now as my life? What does it want to do as my life? What does it want to how does it want to move forward, and see what happens? Very good. Next question says, I've been struggling this week with a feeling of lethargy, edging towards self-pity, malaise, depression, I thought. Then I was listening to a meditation today and it occurred to me that this may not be lethargy, but the equanimity of the isness and acceptance of the impersonality of consciousness. It feels like my body is doing its own thing, i.e. functioning in the world as it needs to, but there's a feeling of futility to it. This is balanced by my caring for others, and then I catch my ego trap of, well, you aren't getting any caring back from anyone. Still looking for some kind of fulfillment, well-being, gratification, etc. My question is, did you experience this at all, and what, if anything, does it indicate? I've been struggling this week with the feelings of lethargy, edging towards self-pity. Absolutely, I experienced that. Absolutely. It was after I had had a seeing of what I really am. We're beginning to disengage them from all the egoic, as mentioned here, all the things that the ego wants, all the things that it's trying to get out from the world and from itself. And it's, as you begin to pull away from these, you begin to become more acutely aware of this voice of I from an ego that is really still seeking things, trying to get. So I wouldn't really say that this is the equanimity of isness, because it wouldn't come with lethargy or self-pity or a feeling of depression. It's probably more like what's left of the egoic sense of self. It is feeling less and less without a purpose. It's feeling less and less without any importance. It's feeling adrift. It has nowhere to seek towards, because more and more your recognition is of that which is already stable and isn't changing or seeking anything at all. It feels like my body's doing its own thing, i.e. functioning in the world as it needs to, but there's a feeling of futility to this. So this is the voice of the ego remnants. What's the point in all this then, if everything just is already? What's the point of me getting out of bed? What's the point of me going to work? What's the point of all this if it's not going to get me anywhere? You know, that's the voice of the last bit of the egoic self. And as you see that this voice is just a voice that is feeling, our ego is saying, well, what am I supposed to do now then? What must going to motivate my actions now that I've, had a deeper seeing? But the ego is there really as a voice for the self, as a voice for the one to speak through. So your ego is going to go from this thing that was seeking and trying to get something all the time into just like now, using this functionality to express these words. Did you experience this at all, and what, if anything, does it indicate? It's just really that our mind, what's left of our thought structure, is scrabbling around trying to find some purpose for its existence. You know, it's trying to find what it's supposed to be doing. It thought it was running your life, and now you're realizing it's not. The great self has always been the one that has been in charge. And this last little voice is saying, yeah, but what about me? You know, I've got nothing to do, nowhere to go. So I'd recognize, just when you see this, I'd recommend when you see this voice, hear this voice, just to step away from it, not to engage with it, just to, again, take refuge in the real self and just begin to live from that place that doesn't need a purpose. It sounds cold from our mind's perspective, but what you really are doesn't need a purpose. Its purpose really is just the joy of self-discovery, if there is one. And as you live from that place, this opens our crown chakra and begins to allow healing to cascade all the way down through the body. When we are struggling with egoic beliefs, then the life force can seem to be cut off from the body. Not completely, of course, but enough to make us feel very, very tired, very lethargic, and self-pity with a small s. So just to be aware this voice of ego, and not to go with it too quickly. You know, something is trying to get somewhere and find a purpose, but is that you? And if you don't identify with that, then you'll find much more energy coming back, much more clarity coming back. And again, asking this question, how does the self want to move as me? What does it want to do as my life? What's the highest version of my life? And this will give your ego some purpose, some way to move forward, instead of just feeling redundant. It feels a bit left out, so you can give it something to do. Good, good. In my early hours of spiritual time, I had a sort of dream or a story come to me, help me to form a question. I felt like I was lost in a maze, and you took my hand and led me out to the most beautiful rose garden. And when I turned to look at the maze, that was the beautiful rose garden too. Then I saw others lost in the maze, and you would go to lead them out into the rose garden, but they would pull away and go further into the maze, which is what I did many times. My question is, why do we turn away from the beautiful rose garden to go down another path in the maze? Even when we glimpse the rose garden, why do we forget and stay in the maze? So I'm assuming that the maze is the mind or the ego, and the rose garden is the self, the beauty of the self. So I felt like I was lost in a maze, and you took my hand and led me out to the most beautiful rose garden. And when I turned to look at the maze, that was the beautiful rose garden too. So once we've had a clear seeing of what we actually are, this rose garden, once we're clear enough out of the maze, we can turn back and say, well, that was the rose garden too. That was the self. I never was what I thought I was. I've always been this impersonal but not cold self. I saw others lost in the maze, and you would go to lead them out to the rose garden, but they would pull away and go further into the maze. Boy, do I know that one, yeah. Which is what I did too many times. My question is, why do we turn away from the beautiful rose garden? to go down another path of the maze. Even when we glimpse the rose garden, why do we forget and stay in the maze? It's really that our self, the self, the awareness, it isn't quite done being someone. It isn't quite done traveling. It isn't quite finished experiencing life as a separate being. It isn't quite ready to come out of that. It wants to know where the exit is to the maze. So when it's ready to come out, it can find its way out. So it says, just kind of show me the door. Right now I know where it is. I'm going back to play a bit more, because the self, he has this human body so that you can experience what it's like to be a separate being until you're ready to come out of that. And the last bit of that is to experience yourself waking up out of that dream. The last bit is to see, I'm not at all what I thought I was. That this rose garden, as we're calling it here, is what I really am. And I've been just playing for a while in this maze. And I guarantee that when you're absolutely ready to come out of the maze, you will. When you've had enough completely, you come out of that into the rose garden. Why do we forget? Really just habit. Just because we've seen the rose garden and we've had an experience of the self and all of its wonder and beauty, immediately we go back to thinking, and our thoughts, our mind, our brain, our physiology is still wired to think in these same ways of separateness. It's still wired to feel and think as a separate being and experience. So we have to go back at some point to keep playing with that for a little while longer. Even when we have seen several times what we are, there will still be this temptation to go and play with the mind, to get lost in its hall of mirrors. Only when that becomes too painful, only when that becomes absolutely unbearable, will someone actually walk out of there on their own and into the rose garden, which is a beautiful thing when it happens. Okay. Really, it's just not done. The self is not done being someone yet, completely. And when it is, it comes out. Two more. The question says, hi. The question I have follows on from our discussions recently around awareness and attention. I can see that I've been trying to control my attention and where it goes to. So this is necessary to start off with. It's necessary at first to bring attention out of the mind, to bring attention away from thoughts and towards the emptiness of your being, towards the real self. That has to be done for a while to kind of get clear enough away from mind to have some clarity about what you actually are. Also, I can see that I've been treating my attention as me and the same as awareness. Can you explain the difference between awareness and our attention? So I can see that I've been trying to control my attention and where it goes to. That's useful up to a point, but then even that has to be dropped. Even that has to be stepped back from. Even that has to be seen as still something I am doing, a subtle doing. So it will step back from doing that. I can see that I've been treating my attention as me and the same as the awareness. So what's the difference? Can you explain the difference between awareness and attention? Well, attention is moving. So it's changing. It can change its focus and it's looking at different things. So it might Attention as you're listening now, might be listening to the words that I'm saying, and then it might drift off to a noise in the room that you're in or next to, and then it might drift to a pain in your foot, or it may go to back to thoughts again, and then it may drift to the emptiness of your being, and there may be states coming and going. So attention is moving in front of you constantly. Not many people are able to recognize that they are watching even their attention. Not many people are able to have that discernment that I can see what my attention is doing. More often than not, as it says here, I can see that I've been treating my attention as me. So attention goes to the emptiness of your being, and there's peace. And then attention goes back to mind, as is its habit, which is to move. It goes back to thoughts or experiences or emotions that are coming up. And we say, I lost that peace, I've lost it, it's gone. So in this stage, we're identifying with and as our attention, we call it I. I am in the presence, I am in the emptiness, we'll say. But if you can come to see that your attention and where it is perceivable, then you're really much closer to the ultimate freedom. That you, as the awareness, are watching even your attention. You can say, today, my attention was on the peace, on the emptiness most of the day. And I had this beautiful day that just flowed, and all my experiences seemed to just come with this synchronicity, and everything was wonderful. And then you can say, today, my attention was all over the place. It was just going from mind back to peace, and then it went back to mind, and then it was stuck on this pain I'm having, and then it went back over here, and it was just all over the place. And I just felt scattered, and I didn't get anything done, and nothing really seemed to flow. So you can tell me that both of those have happened. You can say what your attention was looking at. Sometimes attention looks outwards at mind or the body or the experiences in the world, and sometimes it turns around to look at yourself. Sometimes it turns around to look at the self. When it turns to look at the self, there's peace, you feel peace. When it turns back to look at the mind, we may feel we've lost that if we're identifying as this mechanism. How to know if you're identifying as the attention? Is your experience changing still? Are you still feeling as if you are moving more towards being aware of the presence, more and more the peace? Are you trying to get something to go over here and stay focused on the emptiness itself? Can you get your attention to stay in one place all the time? Can anyone achieve that? Not so much. Because even if somehow you manage to get your attention to stay in that one place, at some point it is going to move. It's the nature of attention to wander, and to wander to different things. So instead, we can just come to a recognition that I can see what attention is looking at, and I can also see attention. It's a very subtle thing to grasp here, but if you are able to see and watching attention even, and maybe I thought that was me, but there's awareness of what my attention is doing. The awareness is prior to the attention. Is the awareness moving and changing? Is the awareness disturbed by wherever attention goes? Is the awareness, the heart as we're calling it tonight, disturbed if attention goes from here to look back out at the mind? If there is a negative emotion arise in the body and attention swings to look at it, is the awareness that's prior to attention affected at all? Can awareness feel it's lost anything? Why is it important to know? Because if you're identifying as the attention, you're going to keep having this oscillation that's, I had it, I lost it, I had it, I lost it. There's peace, and then there's pain. There's peace, and then there's suffering. And it's really, you're voicing what's happening to your attention. Attention is on the real self, and then it swings out to thoughts, and then it goes back here, and it swings out to an experience, and back and forth, and back and forth. So if that's happening to you, have a look and recognize, if you can, that you can see even your attention. It's a very subtle thing, but you are not even your attention. That is a faculty of your mind and body, and it's actually happening in front of you. So attention is moving, changing. Awareness isn't. Absolutely not. Very good. Last question. I'll take one question from the chat box after this. We'll probably run out of time. This last one says, Namaste, Helen. There is a presence that is recognized and an awareness of that presence. There is a sense of nobody, no one, just aware of being aware. It seems timelessly here, so close that there isn't two, not even one, like the wave and the ocean. Thoughts are often in the background, not touching this silence. And then, when attention is given to the thoughts, a story begins, and often they are believed in for a while. Then when I see through the story, they disappear, and I'm left smiling, sometimes shaking my head. When I watched your video on renunciation from that place of presence, there was something familiar, but I don't know what. That night I was watching this sense of the mind in turmoil, like having a tantrum. The body was twitching as if there was something, the body was twitching, and it was if something was screaming. Beliefs were arising, and it was like I was forced to stay and watch. It didn't affect the presence in any way, yet I cannot say what I am or who I am. Why? Is it the same recognition each time? Boundless, so much love and joy, and yet I still believe in what stories arise. When will these stories lessen? Much love and blessings. So that night I was watching the mind in turmoil, having a tantrum. I think we can all remember those times, recognize those times. It was as if something was screaming. Beliefs were arising, and it was like I was forced to stay and watch. It didn't affect the presence in any way. So there's a recognition of that place that isn't changing at all, that isn't moving. And yet I cannot say what I am or who I am. Why? Is it the same recognition each time? Boundless, and so much love and joy, and yet I can still believe in what stories arise. When will these stories lessen? So the key to this is in this first sentence. There is a presence that is recognized and an awareness of that presence. There is a sense of nobody, no one, just aware of being aware. So if there's awareness of that presence, then there is still two there. It's a very, very subtle thing, this, very subtle. If I am watching the presence, then I'll have to watch, just as we were just saying in this last question, that presence be replaced by these stories. There'll still be an option for me where to move from and what to look at. So while there seems to be two places, you will still experience this shift back and forth. It was like I was forced to stay and watch, this question says. It didn't affect the presence. There's been this recognition that something isn't changing. So what is it then that sees the presence and also sees the stories? What is it that is watching both of those? There's awareness of the presence and there's awareness of these stories. How to get these stories to lessen and the believing of them is to recognize that which is watching both. So awareness is even before this sense of presence. The sense of presence that is noticed is not continuous. Even if it's there throughout the whole waking state, it's gone when you're asleep at night time. Or you could say that there's awareness of presence in the waking state. In the waking state goes, there's awareness of its absence. But there is always awareness. It's really, really, really clear to it's clear, it's not moving, it's not changing at all. So if you move yourself back from even as beautiful as his presence is, even this amazing boundless love and joy, if you take another step back in your identification, what is behind or prior to even presence? What is watching presence? We say it so easily that I notice this presence. We put so much attention on the presence and we ignore the I that's noticing it. But if you can investigate that a little bit, you'll find that there's something even better than the presence. As amazing as that is, there is a stable place which isn't oscillating or swinging at all. It's just watching. It's watching without any watcher at all. Awareness itself, pure awareness. And then there won't seem to be two. It won't matter whether you're watching stories or watching presence. There'll be nothing that's preferring. It's where you're already looking from, but it just has to be recognized clearly. There is something before even presence. There is something before these stories even arose the first time. The presence is when the stories are quiet. When the stories arise, they take center stage in the attention. And more, the presence may just be there, noticed because the stories are thinning away to some degree. But rather than waiting for that process to happen, I'd suggest just stepping back into your real self, that which just is and isn't preferring anything at all. It's a small sentence that you've put here, but it's so important. There is a presence that is recognized and an awareness of that presence. Nobody ever puts any attention on the awareness. All the attention goes to the presence. But if you've had enough of this swinging backwards and forwards, you'll look at this awareness and see there is nothing behind that. There is nothing prior to awareness. There is a presence appearing in front of it, and then sometimes a person or an egoic self. But there is no further back you can go. And this awareness is a place to recognize yourself clearly, to become that, to become established, to know that that's what you are, rather than anything that's moving and changing. So just to gently ask the question, what is before even presence? What is before even that joy, peace, and love? Those are arising from somewhere, from something. Where does joy and peace and love come from? Where does this presence emanate from? Just allow that question to take you into an experience, which isn't really an experience, but. And in that recognition, the stars will fall away by themselves. And even if they are playing, it just will not matter. To be in that place, it doesn't even prefer presence rather than stories. It's utter, utter freedom. we get stuck in our own trap here because the present seems to be so beautiful that we don't want to transcend that. We don't want to go any further than that. But if you don't identify even with that presence, there's something even better, completely stable. Better isn't the right word, but you'll see what I mean. Okay. Very good questions there. Okay. I think we've done enough for tonight. Thank you for joining me, and namaste. Thank you.